As my mom's full-time ALS caregiver from the day of her diagnosis 5 years ago until her death in October 2025, I wondered what an astronaut must go through emotionally in a high-pressure, confined environment, much as we had been in. Have astronauts felt an overwhelming sense of guilt or shame in their absence from the lives of those they love? Have they struggled to communicate what their mission was like upon returning to Earth? Have they ever experienced an enormous mental wall of social paralysis that seems impossible to explain and for others to understand? As it turns out, the answer is yes. 4 hours before takeoff, astronauts put on their suits. 2.5 hours before, the crew enters the ship and the astronauts are strapped in. 45 minutes before the launch, the bridge that connects the launch tower to the ship is removed. At T-minus 3 seconds, the engine ignites, and at T-minus 0 seconds, the clamps that are holding onto the rocket release, and that sucker launches. Astronauts are prepared for launch. I was not. I woke up to scream early in the morning and found my mom on the bathroom floor, face down, unable to move. Our family's rocket accelerated as the paramedics took her to the hospital. After stabilizing, she was transferred to a physical therapy rehab center, which she would stay at for 3 months. And after work, the night she arrived, when I went to see her, she relayed the diagnosis to me. When she came home, the living room in our small house became our space station. That was where Mom's bed was, where she sat in her electric wheelchair, and where we pivoted her on disc to her bedside commode until her body would no longer allow either. My dad, my younger sister, and I were her crew. She actually called us space cadets all the time, which I never even thought about until after I had written the article in which to you I am reading from. Kind of funny, huh? Astronauts need to be hyper-vigilant, as did we. My mom's life was at stake as well, and she fought to live until the moment her lungs gave out. There was no point in time in which at least one of us was not in the room with her, nights included. When she had mucus in her throat, it was up to us to take action to make sure she didn't drown in it. We constantly needed to make sure that her eye gaze AAC, her Dolby Dynavox, wasn't frozen or malfunctioning so she could communicate. We needed to make sure her call bell was working, especially if the eye gaze were to fail, which it would. She had a strict medication schedule 5 times a day. We needed to adjust her BiPAP mask so that she was comfortable and be sure there were no issues with the machine. Any little adjustment she needed to be comfortable, any itch to scratch, we were there all of the time, dropping everything we were doing to tend to her. In the mission-centered neurological state, the brain is constantly in a high alpha or gamma state of hyperfocus. Both astronauts in space and my family experienced this. Just as with astronauts, returning to Earth and transitioning to a state of beta-theta causes friction of brain states. To socialize, your brain needs to be in a low beta state. After long-term hyper-wired, high-speed states, the brain, which lingers in a state of post-mission, gets disoriented when you're facing instances of casual conversation with a friend, for instance. It causes anxiety spikes. It causes social fatigue. Learning this made so much sense as to why I burn out so fast. It had been the case long before my mom had died, and now it is as well. It creates a mental wall. When astronauts return to Earth, they go through a process of post-flight readaptation, a phase which includes what NASA researchers called reentry deceleration. There is no on or off switch to transition, even when a mission is over. When your brain is so hyper-tuned to such an isolated environment, stepping back into a social environment outside of a mission is overwhelming and draining. It's a readaptation and recovery period, so I suppose I can cut myself some slack. Criticizing yourself causes your body to release the same fight or flight chemicals as when you're facing a threat. Self-compassion is one of those skills that's sometimes hard to wrangle. Astronaut Chris Hadfield made a statement that hits home about how I feel going to the grocery store. He said it's like being a newborn, this sudden sensory overload of noise, color, smells, and gravity after months of quietly floating. It's a neurological wiring of being overly prepared for a crisis situation and environment which you are no longer in. It becomes sensory overload being around people, even when it's online. Many astronauts face an identity crisis upon return. Their whole mission had become their identity. When it ends, what then? There's a craving that comes with that. The what then part I bypassed, but I do have the craving. Neuropsychologically, there's a demand for a challenge and a hunger for accomplishment. I didn't delve too deep about what post-mission astronauts do to feed the hunger, but I can tell you since October I've been hyper-focused and cycling between creating content for personal projects. Ones that I had started prior but had little time to invest in. It's not for the sake of catching up on lost time, it's that my brain can't relax. I'm not trying to avoid social relationships or intending to put projects first. It's not for lack of love for my friends and family that I've been struggling to be present for. It's a mismatch of brain states. The prolonged heightened cognitive state causes neuroplastic changes that need to decelerate after a mission's end. And deceleration extends to the social realm. Both astronauts and I experience guilt, disconnect, and challenges in communicating the experience. These barriers make reconnecting with friends and family immeasurably difficult. The incommunicability of experience is a cornerstone challenge for both astronauts and myself in returning to socialization. It's also been a significant variable in my withdrawal during my time in space. NASA's Psychology of Space Exploration reads, quote, astronauts frequently report that their experiences in space are difficult to articulate to those who have not been there. The profound shift in perspective, particularly after seeing Earth from orbit, creates a cognitive and emotional gap between astronauts and the general public, unquote. How do you bridge a contextual gap of an experience that is so incredibly foreign to everyone you know? There's a wall that's faced, despite expressing every detail of an experience to someone who is not in my ship. On my ALS journey, I was kicked out of the ICU while my mom was paralyzed, incapacitated, and needed advocating for. No one has that experience. So how are you supposed to bridge that gap? For 5 years, I felt like I was doing a spacewalk at 17,500 miles an hour. Astronauts who walked on the moon, including Buzz Aldrin, have described feeling like intruders in their own lives coming home. There was a common fear around their experience in space having made them too different to reconnect with others and opting to keep to themselves. A sentiment I read multiple times was the feeling of interrupting the lives of family and friends whose lives had gone on just fine without them. Reconnecting at times feels like sitting down to a movie that's long been playing in my absence. Those feelings strengthen the mental wall of social paralysis. The couple of times a year I gathered the energy to log into Facebook, which long ago I was extremely active on, I would freeze. I missed birthdays, weddings, graduations, and babies being born. I had been away from my best friends. I was too terrified to send a message knowing that they would reply and I would want to do the same thing but couldn't bring myself to. Several astronaut memoirs describe the feeling of social indebtedness. To this day, there's a disconnect yet to mend. I struggle with that despite the open arms of my loved ones and no supporting evidence that I had lost my social capital with anyone, and the need to repay my friends and family for lost time. One of my closest friends who I had not seen in years came to my mom's wake, and it was very difficult to look her in the eye and very emotional to hug her for the first time in so long. The deeper I dove in my research, the clearer the mirror reflection of psychological challenges were between those who have experienced what I have and am going through now. My mental wall often launches when I'm ready to send a message. When it rises, my skies turn from light blue to black just as quickly as astronauts see at the 2-minute mark after launch when they exit the atmosphere. The velocity at that point makes it difficult for the astronauts on board to breathe or to move their arms, and it's hard to move my arms too. It becomes an impossible feat to move them toward the keyboard or click on a message in my inbox to return a text. I've never understood why, nor been able to explain the sensation until today. While never having left the Earth's atmosphere, I've felt for quite some time that I've been light years away. Our ship having landed, our crew grieves as we touch our feet back on the ground. I wish my mom had lived to see a cure for ALS. And though there was little chance that she would have had a rare reversal, The three of us did everything we could to help her live the best life she could as long as she could. And in that regard, the mission was a success.
Thanks for a wonderful birthday.
You're welcome, my wonderful mom.
Now to learn again to find my footing.